It's just like, oh, just out with friends, so we decided to get a tattoo.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It feels amazing to be here at IFFLA. This is my first time at the festival. This is our LA premiere. Indian Film Festival of Los Angeles always has like really cool curation, and I think it's a chance to see South Asian movies that are not typical South Asian movies and are going to have a little bit of a different bent to it that I think audiences are really hungering for. I was in a long distance relationship in 2009, and I went to go see my boo. She was in India, and I'm a Sri Lankan person. Things sort of switched for the feature, but I go to visit her over there, and I think, all right, like everything's going to go back to normal, once we see each other. And we had this 2-week trip planned, and that absolutely was not the case. And timing sort of, it takes a while to reestablish a connection, once distance has set in. So I'm going through this trip, and it goes so against the expectation of what you thought the trip was going to be, and it was like the worst fucking trip of my life. But like while I was going through it, I was like, oh, but this would be an interesting movie, and like this is the experience that made me become a filmmaker, period. Like I had always wanted to make movies, but then once this experience happened, I was like, all right, like I'm gonna make this movie, and I was just so compelled to it. And for the last 14 years, I've been working towards this and making short films and other things and developing my relationships with my cast and crew. But it was a long experience to be able to get over here, but this was the thing that I always wanted to make, and so to now have made it is like such an amazing feeling. And but even though that was the inspiration for the plot, I was 24 when that happened, and this movie is so much more about adult relationships. And so so much of my experiences in the 2000s, and thinking about like when you're a little bit older, like what is at stake in a relationship. It's not just like you're 24 and you could just like break up. It's like, okay, cool, we're not meant to be, like we could just break up and do that. It's like, no, there's an investment that's over here, and how do we explore that, and two people that are growing in different directions, and how maybe even if we have different perspectives, we could still come to an understanding with each other. In the beginning, I was trying to write something like in the there's so many eras of the movie. In the 2012 to 2016 era, I was trying to do like super serious, minimalist, Antonioni-esque art house like drama. And then I had to sort of reconcile with like, well, what are the movies I enjoy watching? And like I love that stuff too, but then I was just watching like more comedies and other things were just like, no, I want a movie that like you can watch and it feels real and honest and has all those like things and like a definitely like strong directorial vision, but I want a movie that just feels like real and relatable and fun. And like so much about relationships is like there's drama, but then there's also fun and there's joy and levity and misunderstandings. And that's when I was like, okay, going comedy kind of like makes a little bit more sense. And I kind of think of the movie as almost like a fictionalized, like a verite sitcom, right? So because it's like almost this like situational comedy sort of thing, but like in a totally like indie naturalistic style. And I think that's really what also helps with the movie's unique tone, is that it is, has like strong like sort of like style, but it's like a very sort of like quotidian story. Filming in Sri Lanka was great. We had an awesome production crew over there. VisionWorks LK, that was the production company we worked with, and they worked with so many other kinds of productions. So they just like, there's no stress about anything, like all permits and schedules, and like they were really like, I didn't stress about that stuff. But the strike happened 2 days into our shoot. And so we were shooting, we were at Gillian Anderson's old house. That was one of our locations. And I'm on the phone with our producer in the US, and I had just gotten a leech bite, and our actor Satya is wiping the blood off my foot, and we're on the phone, and I'm like chain smoking cigarettes. And I was like, so like, we have to stop? Like, we have to stop production? He's like, yeah, like, it's official now. And so I had to get the crew together, and it was heartbreaking. And I had to say, like, I know we're gonna get it. We're gonna get the agreement that'll allow us to shoot again. I don't know when that's gonna happen, and I hope it's gonna be sooner than later, and we could get everyone back together. And then it was a week of like calling SAG every day, rewriting everything. So I just then like got like really lean and specific with it, and I think it all sort of helped the movie too. But we were one day away from having to pull the plug on production completely, because at some point our line producer there's like, we're not making a documentary in Sri Lanka. Like at some point we're going to need the actors, and it's a movie that's surrounding 2 actors, so we really do need them. And so that day I was like, all right, if we don't hear by tonight, I'm going to make the call and I'll pull the plug. And I don't know what that means for the future of this movie, but Then we were going to shoot some exteriors, and I refreshed my email, and then the SAG agreement finally came through, and I was like, all right, get your ass to set right now. And then it was just 15 days of usual production stress because we were doing 40 locations in and around Sri Lanka, a proper road trip movie, 121 scenes in 17 days. So it was hardcore, but so lovely. And shooting in Sri Lanka too, like we kept the script a little loose because I really wanted to be inspired by the things that we would experience along the way. I didn't want to be so strict to like this is what it says in the script. Like I really wanted to have a looseness to it because that's how, especially a road trip movie, it needs to feel reactive and adaptive to the environment. We cast him in 2015 and we did a short film called Tourist together, and that's where I first met these actors. And before that, before meeting them, they were just sort of like ideas and concepts in my head based on like some of my experiences, and meeting them, that's what defined the character. And that's when it put like a tone and a face and like an idea of like who that character is. So it is entirely inseparable from the relationship that we started creating together in 2014 for 10 years. And yeah, it was a real way of allowing them to be such a part of the storytelling too and develop like with these characters for these years. So by the time we were shooting, like I was rewriting stuff every day. So like they're in makeup and I'm giving them new pages. I'm like, sorry guys, everything's changing. But they know these characters now, and so we're really able to just sort of like jump right in and just do what we have to do in a way that's really, really exciting. And I think that's what makes the movie feel like really fresh and lived in and almost just like improvised in a true way, but not like fully improvised. Yeah. I mean, there's so much crazy stuff that, like, while we were shooting, I did a pyrotechnic scene, and that was my, like, you know, it's a very ambitious, independent movie, you know, and that was like just like the prep and the build up to it, and we're setting up these fireworks alongside the water. So then now there's wind, and then the wind also creates like the hypotenuse. To go back to geometry terms, the hypotenuse of where the fireworks were like landing and blowing, we had to really consider, and like our actor Anastasia had to run past these fireworks, and it was just like so much like is that buildup of like, okay, it's like this is the climax, and like we've been building up to this moment, and then to just see it executed so well on take one, it's like, okay, like, because it's scary, and we're dealing with like dangerous stuff, and we're being as safe as we possibly can and doing it in the right way, but still you never know what could happen. And it just felt all so ambitious. And then just seeing that and then watching the dailies again, I was like, we pulled it off, and like I think we created something that just feels so uniquely cinematic, and especially in a movie. It's like our budget was $250,000. It's a true independent movie. Like this was equity investors that are my friends and family, crowdfunding, and my life savings. That's what the budget is, and we pulled off something that's, when you watch the movie, it does not feel like two characters in a room talking. Well, it's not going to take another 14 years because now I'm all about that urgency. It's like I'll film something tomorrow without a script. But now I feel so free because this is the one thing I'd wanted to do. It's like the only dream of my adult life, and now I've achieved it, which is like a really amazing, fulfilling feeling. But now I'm like free to explore so many other things. So what I'm prioritizing right now is a horror movie about the horror of making movies. So it's certainly inspired by some of my experiences here, and I think a lot of filmmakers will be able to watch, and like, there's all these great moments, but when you're at your lowest, it's really, really, really low. And I want to make a nihilistic horror movie that really reflects the reality of like set. Like I want there to be scenes where like it's the director and the DP like kind of passive aggressively arguing about the best way to approach a shot, but never really show what one they went with, and letting the audience sort of get in on it. And so if you're part of the filmmaking community, then you see this stuff, and it's like, oh my God, like that's how it is. And if you're not, then you're kind of seeing behind the scenes. But I also want it to feel like an early 80s slasher, like Black Christmas or Friday the 13th Part 2 or 4, like true like slasher, but like in the conceit of like a group of people trying to make an indie horror film.